Welcome to the Jaros Health Podcast, where we make it easy for you to better serve older adults. This is a weekly Jerry on Ice segment that is a collaboration with the Institute of Clinical Excellence, the official Con Ed provider for the Jaros community.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jerry on Ice version of the PT on Ice Daily Show. Christina Previtt here. I am one of the two lead faculty for the Modern Management of the Older Adult Division of the Institute of Clinical Excellence. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful week so far. We had a busy weekend. Dustin was in Asheville, North Carolina last weekend at the Movement Joint doing the live version of the Modern Management course. Good morning, Kelsey. We are in week 3 of our online version of the Modern Management course. So we are starting to deep dive into exercise prescription and just having a great time doing the online version of the course. So if you guys are interested in the online course, our next cohort starts in September, and I really encourage you to jump on because it is a ton of fun. And Dustin and I are always revamping the material, and you'll always have access to that. So really cool. Okay, so for today's version of Jerry on Ice, I thought that we would do a little bit of a continuation of some of the things that Dustin was talking about with his experience in the Senior Masters Games. If you guys don't know, I am the person behind the page, the Masters Athlete Collective. So I started this page about 6 months ago, where the idea was that I was going to start profiling Masters athletes in a variety of sports, at a variety of ages and a variety of competitive levels. So I have had people from 39 to 98 who I have profiled on the collective, people who are competing with themselves, but still consider themselves athletes because they're training. And I would 100% agree with that. To people who are traveling all over the world internationally to compete at some of the games, like the Senior Masters Games that was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a couple of weeks ago. And so this is a really growing cohort of individuals. So when the Senior Masters Games started in 1987, there was only 2,500 participants. And I believe the number for 2019 was over 30,000. So we are having a lot of people. There are starting to be more vigorous qualification totals. We're starting to see more heats that are being involved. We're starting to see increasing age groups. There was Julia the Hurricane who won in the track and field events, and she was 103 years old. So that is one, incredible. 2, she does not look like she's 103. I would have guessed her at about 70. And so we're starting to see this is a growing cohort of individuals, and we're super glad for it. As PTs, we are probably the number one advocate for them. And we should be, because a lot of times their experience in the healthcare system is that doctors don't know how to treat them, or people don't know, healthcare providers that I go to aren't really sure what to do with me, those type of things. And I've actually been highlighting some of those sentiments on the Masters Athlete Collective this week, because I asked them, what if you could talk to your healthcare provider or you could tell them anything, what would it be? And so I took out a couple of themes and I highlighted them on the collective. So if you guys haven't taken a look, the Instagram account is at the Masters Athlete Collective. And I would encourage you to take a look and kind of get involved in some of those conversations, because it's nice to talk directly to the athletes who you will be serving. So if we're talking about this cohort of individuals, why would we want people to be continuing to participate in sport versus just being active? What are some of the perks, the benefits of the Masters athlete versus even a physically active community dwelling older adult? And this is a growing area of research. So people are starting to take a look at, is there something unique about the Masters athlete? We would probably instinctively say yes. But what are some of the perks of continuing to participate in sport? So in 2017, Jenkins and colleagues did a systematic review of qualitative studies. So they interviewed the Masters athletes and started to identify themes that they spoke about regarding their ability to continue to participate in sport and what that did for them and their ability to age in a way and along a trajectory that was most beneficial for them. And so I was going to talk a little bit about some of the results of that systematic review and then put in a little bit more around some of the physical characteristics that we can see with the master's level athlete when we're comparing to a younger cohort of individuals or a physically active community dwelling older adult. And so some of the pros is that people who are a master's athlete feel like they are contributing very positively or begin to think very positively about their age. So because they're working in age groups, they're starting to, look for PRs within their age cohort. They're starting to compete against the same aged peers. We know that the idea of getting older can sometimes be negative, especially in our media world where everything is anti-aging. You're trying to fight the perception of your age, and you're trying to sometimes not even admit what your age is. People who are in the master's athlete category tend to not be as worried about, trying to get older. Like, it's not a bad thing to get older. They embrace their age, because they're working and, competing against individuals in that same age category. And a lot of times when I'm doing the profiles for the master's athlete, they want to tell me about their birthday coming up. They'll say like, I'm 48, but I have a birthday next month and I'm 49. And I often see some of my other clients, do not want to admit what their age is. And so I see that as a unique, factor with the master's athlete. Another thing is that it supports social cohesiveness and community. So we know when we talk about things like clinical geriatric syndromes that a lack of social support can lead to a vulnerability. And this is not the case for the master's athlete. So you're not only seeing people who have a good support group around them in terms of family and friends, but you're seeing individuals with very like-minded ideologies around aging, competing, training, nutrition, all of those things that are coming together and supporting each other for sport. And a lot of people do say to me that the masters competition has a very different feel from an open competition, because as much as people are trying to compete against each other, there really is a very strong sense of community that sometimes is missed a little bit more in an open competition because of the nature of the event. And so that's been a pretty consistent theme, and very it's validated in the literature as well. The other thing about continuing to participate is that if you have an athlete who is a very high level athlete in the open category when they were in their 20s and 30s, being able to continue to participate in sport allows them to maintain that part of their identity. So I think that's really, really important. For me, I'm a competitive weightlifter. I have been in strength-based sport for almost a decade now. And the idea of losing that piece of me is something that I would definitely grieve. And so if I can be healthy enough to continue to participate, potentially at obviously a lesser level than I did when I was younger, you still have that sense of self, and they really believe strongly that that is something that continues to drive them to be a master's level athlete. So the next theme that Jenkins brought up in his systematic review was improved health. So there was actually a longitudinal study that was comparing inactive older adults, moderately active older adults, master's athletes and chess players, and took a variety of health-related measures on self-report. And the main result from that study was that master's athletes have higher rates of injury, but lower rates of chronic disease. And so that's a really interesting conclusion. Some people would say that higher rate of injury is a bad thing. But when we look at the literature for competitive sport versus a recreational middle-aged person or younger person, we know that competing at a high level has its risks. You are pushing your body to an extreme. If we're looking at like the set point, we're probably not in that U-shaped curve where wellness is at the top and sedentary activity versus elite level sport is on either side. We're pushing towards the elite level sport. So we are starting to push our body, especially when we've been competing for decades. There are injuries that accumulate, and that is okay. And so often my master's athletes will say, we're going to continue training despite injury. We're going to be looking for healthcare providers who are going to allow us to continue to participate at the level that we wish to for as long as possible, of course, within reason. But they would rather have a sore knee than cardiovascular disease or diabetes. And when we look at the issues that are coming into our healthcare system, we don't have a movement problem. We have a lack of movement problem. And so we want to be able to allow the masters athlete to continue to participate in as much as our capacity will allow, and just acknowledge that, when you're dealing with a high level athlete, irrespective of age, that injury is just part of the game. And managing that is the way that they're going to be able to continue to participate. So it's just amazing. And then the last two themes that came up there, because they're kind of really close, is their competitive nature and the love of the sport. And that, I think, is an incredible theme to have, because to have a love and a passion in your life in general is fantastic and so good for your health as a way to, have that outlet of energy and doing something that you love. But allowing that to be a sport as we get older and continuing to participate in that, I think is just such an incredible thing, to be able to allow or to help facilitate an individual to continue to do. And so something that, I kind of loved was one of the main themes that came up for some of the perks of still competing. So these are kind of the things that, individuals have identified as their motivators for continuing to participate, despite potential barriers like, lots of things on their time, health issues, injuries, work, like caregiving responsibilities, all those type of things. And just things that they kind of saw from a mental health perspective that were, facilitating their participation and making them feel like they are part of this community. So what about some of the physiological factors? So we know that there's a lot of good in terms of being in a group and the social support, and how that participating in sport, especially one that you love, is going to be very good for your overall sense of well-being. But what we're also seeing in the literature is that there's a lot of physical benefits from continuing to participate in sport. So one thing is that, especially for the strength or power-based athlete, that they're maintaining their muscle mass. They have a lot higher baseline muscle mass, even though their rate of decline, especially after the age of 70, the slope of that line appears to be the same. Their starting point is so much higher. So they saw that masters level athletes were able to maintain significantly more muscle and had significantly less fat. So overall better body composition than the sedentary older adults. And some of that was kind of what Dustin mentioned last week with Becca Georgery's stuff, where, she's doing this SAFE exam, or so the seniors athlete fitness exam, because the masters level athletes are just blowing her normative data out of the water. And so how are we going to kind of get an idea of where their deficits lie when their demands on their body are so much higher than somebody who potentially wasn't participating in sport? And so where do we kind of to get that line? Like, well, how do we continue to progress them? And so they have an increased resiliency, an increase of reserve that we need to respect and be able to treat appropriately. And then the second type of physical benefit that they're going to maintain is their aerobic capacity. So what we see with the masters level athlete is that older adults who are in endurance sports, who are continuing to train and participate in sport, can be compared from a cardiovascular health perspective to the sedentary younger person. So could you imagine doing a stress test and you are 70 and you are just crushing the 25-year-old beside you? And that is not unrealistic. That is what we are seeing in the literature when we're comparing the groups that are often getting compared when we're looking at cardiovascular health outcomes and aerobic capacity outcomes when we're looking at the master's level athlete, is that we're comparing a master's level athlete between 60 and 70 who has participated. Usually they look for a long history of training, which is fair. You don't want a significant deconditioning effect, to a collegiate level athlete who is younger in their sport, the community dwelling older adults. So to compare across age, the collegiate level athlete, we're comparing across training, and then the sedentary younger person to compare collegiate to young. And so what we're starting to see in those four groups is that obviously the master's level athlete from an aerobic perspective is surpassing the community dwelling older adult. The collegiate level athlete is surpassing the master's level. So we are going to see some decline in aerobic capacity as we get older. That's an expectation. We're seeing a decrease in redundancy across all of our organ systems. That just makes sense. But we're starting to see that there is no statistically significant difference between the younger sedentary person and the master's level athlete. And so we are able to maintain so much from a cardiovascular perspective as we get older. And the idea behind the losses is that we're going to see a decrease in max heart rate, a decrease in stroke volume, which is going to relate to a decrease in VO2 max as we get older. But our lactate threshold exercise economy apparently remains the same. And so some of that is physiological responses to changes in age and lack of reserve and redundancy in the cardiovascular system. And then a secondary piece to that is that usually as we get older, the amount of training volume and intensity that we're able to recover from decreases. And therefore we have to just go appropriate, like we have to kind of cater our programming appropriately so that the person that we're working with as a coach or as a therapist is going to be able to recover in between events so that we're not kind of overtraining, overreaching, and leading to more debilitating injury. So what we're seeing is that there was no difference in VO2 max between masters endurance runners and young sedentary controls. And so from an overall perspective in terms of continuing to compete in sport, I don't mean that over the age of 40, you should be trying to make it to the Pan Am Games. Like if that is your goal, that is amazing and I'm going to facilitate that. But even healthy, local, recreational competition that could be with your girlfriend while you're training for a half marathon or, going into a club or something like that has different levels. I think there's a big benefit to that. There's the accountability, the social cohesiveness, all those things that happen at any age. But as we get over the age of 40, we need that push a little bit too. Just like we did when we were 20, and that doesn't change with age. And so, one of the things that I just love about working with a master's level athlete is they've kind of gone into that mental space around, this is what they need, this is what they love, and this is what they're going to continue to do. And so the literature, one, is supporting that. And two, we're seeing that, the most records that are being broken are in the 50 plus age categories across multiple sports. And that's because we're starting to see more and more people continue to participate and compete, whether it's with themselves or, against athletes from all over the world. So I think that's pretty incredible. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I haven't kind of jumped on here and talked about the Masters athlete in a while, and it's something that I geek out over, something that I really love. I would love if you guys followed along with the Masters Athlete Collective. That is a passion project of mine that I really enjoy doing. And so if you guys have any other questions, if you want any of the citations that I mentioned today, just tag me in the comments below. So sometimes there's so much going on in the ICE page that I lose you guys commenting on these videos. So tag me and I will see you all in a couple weeks. I hope you guys have a wonderful, so I'm in Canada. So this is our long weekend for July 1st. That's Canada Day. I know you guys have July 4th, but I don't know if you guys get the weekend off or just the day, but enjoy whatever time you get off. I seem like such a Canadian, but, enjoy the weather, enjoy the sun, and I hope you guys get outside and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the weekly Jerry on Ice segment of the Jaros Health Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, you should go to jaroshealth.com to check out our course offerings that will make it easy for you to better serve older adults. Once again, that's GEROS health.com and click on the courses tab. Thanks for listening.